Welcome. I have a wonderful guest for you this evening. So many of you have written in and asked me, Bobbi, what about moving? Moving is absolutely chaotic. What can I do to make it easier? How do I move 40 years of my life from one spot to another? Well, have I got the solution for you? And her name is Margaret Walsh. She's president of Changing Places, Inc. Welcome, Margaret.
Thank you so much for having me.
Well, I am just really excited. I finally have the expert that all the viewers have been wanting to hear from, because it is an art.
We've been doing it for almost 14 years. At one point, nobody had ever learned anything about packing and unpacking to assist people. And now it's a huge industry, nationally and internationally. So I have lots of stories to tell.
Well, I'm sure. How did you get to this point? I know you've had a wonderful, illustrious career, and I can tell that you really love doing this because your stories are fabulous. And you will hear some of these stories this evening, as well as some of the letters that have been written as testimonials. Mm-hmm.
I started when I moved to San Francisco from Philadelphia. Mm-hmm. I had to create a business, and I opened up Rent-A-Wife. We did errands, housekeeping, and catering, and my first client asked me to move him to New York City, and I flew there and had my family come up from Philadelphia and help me move him, and it was so successful. It was a vice president from GE Capital. We had a ball, and it was such a gift that he went off to work, and we put things in storage. We fixed his apartment, hung his pictures. And he was blessed, and we were grateful. So that was the beginning. I thought, ooh, I have to do something and make a business out of that.
And so it's gone on and on and on. And Rent-A-Wife is no longer that. You are now Changing Places, Inc.
Yes. Okay. I've been in business almost 14 years, and we did. It was a more appropriate name.
Yes, I was just going to say. Yeah. But I can remember back. I think that I first heard of the Rent-A-Wife concept with some of the 49ers that were coming into town, and their wives, of course, had children. They were coming in just for the season, and this concept of setting it all up prior to them being here so they could find everything.
Yeah. I'm doing the same thing as I was before. It's just a different name. Mm-hmm. It's a turnkey operation. If they want it, they can give me the keys, go on vacation, and come back, and their house is already set up. Or I can work with their children and themselves, and I just finished a job that took 6 months. My client, who was an older person, had been she heard about me through word of mouth, and she had 4,000 square feet that needed to be moved to a 1,800 square foot space, and her house had 36 storage rooms, or spaces, big spaces, and she was moving to where there were accommodations for 6 storage spaces. So over a 6-month period of time, with 5 children coming from all over the world, we moved her into this place, and we just kept saying, this is a miracle, this is unbelievable. She ended up happy. All the children divided the things up. She kept the best for herself. She ended up with a little museum, and it couldn't have been done by herself or her children. There was, it's a very passionate thing to move. It's very difficult.
It is difficult. There's a lot of emotion to moving. You're leaving memories. You're going to a new place. Yeah. Sometimes it's forced upon them. Yeah. Sometimes it's not happy. Sometimes it is. And even when it is happy, it's still chaotic. So how do you stay focused?
Well, talking about the stress of this one, my client's husband had died 2 years before, and the children wanted her to move to a retirement home. I stayed focused because I've learned over time I can't be involved in her upset because it doesn't serve them. So I stay in the process of their move, and I have supervisors that come, and I'm called in when I'm needed, and I make things happen, and I move things around and get things organized so that my supervisors aren't the ones that are in the limelight. I can come in and sometimes streamline the operation so that they go into a different direction. So, and I also fine-tune my crew to the people that I'm working with. I'm a very high energy person, and a lot of people don't want that. So I have very sweet, soft-spoken crew, And then I have some people who want the handsome young man who's really strong, and so it's very funny. It's like every business. You have to match it to the personality, otherwise they can't be happy.
It's true. It's very true. It's you have to mirror the client in order to get the successful result.
Right.
Because I notice that about myself, having not to slow down the speech pattern,
right.
Because they'll just look at you with this very glazed look, and you just go, no, missed that. So I have to break right now. We will be right back to hear more about how to make moves very, very smooth and less chaotic, and also have some funny stories for you, so stay tuned. Thanks. Well, welcome back. We're here with Margaret Walsh, and we are talking about her company, Changing Places, Inc. And moving is daunting. Any of you who have done it, those with toddlers, it's amazing how they get it accomplished. And then you've got the senior community. But one of the things that I know we have a slide for is moving and all of the different issues that are under moving. You've got relocating, you could be downsizing, you could be upsizing, you have less storage, you have garage sales to deal with, you've got donations to charities, you've got giving items to friends and family. How do you put them in order?
Well, it depends on how big the house is, and I try to get the client to keep as much as they can and give it to the children. Then some of them want to sell things, so I have a lot of different auctioneers and people who will take things on consignment, eBay, and they'll sell for things from eBay. So you look at the whole scope and ask them what's their budget, what are their priorities, what can they do themselves, what do they want to do themselves, and who will help them. A lot of the time senior citizens will trust you, but they aren't sure that you're going to give them a good move. So you have to work with them to figure out where they want to go. And if it's something they haven't moved in 40 years, they don't know themselves. So it takes a little while to figure out the process. And seniors are an easy target because they're very trusting. Yeah. And I have found that they are the clients that need most hands-on because they are so trusting. And I told you that story. I just got a client yesterday. Actually, her daughter had been moving with us 6 years ago. And she has a tiny little place, 600 square feet. She gave away everything she owned to move into a retirement home. And she said yesterday, I don't care if I'm in the place for 2 years. She's moving into a 3-bedroom house. And she said the movers broke everything. It was all scratched. And she's going to just go with us and let us do the whole thing. We'll do utility close downs. We've done a layout for where the furniture will go, hang the pictures, work with the closet people to get the closets organized, and get her all moved in and get the beds made so that she can move on with her life, because she's not very healthy right now because it's been a very traumatic year. She moved from LA up here, and so she wants to get on with her life and have some fun.
Cool. But that's just what I mean. I walked in on these senior clients, and the moving company had left all the boxes. And he was in a wheelchair. He couldn't move. Yeah. Right in front of the patio door. So, kick off the shoes and start tearing apart boxes. But I'll tell you what, I felt better after I left, Margaret, because they could get to the bedroom and they could get out the door if there was an emergency. But those are the things that you do.
I take everything out of boxes, set them all up, lay them out so that we decide where they're going to go, and then put them away, because you want grandma's china perhaps either in the sideboard or you want it up in the top cabinet and you're not going to use it for Christmas. So I came into the business as a professional organizer, and all of my team are really skilled professionals, and they'll hit the ground running and they know where things should go. But we work with the client to label the cabinets, put things away so that they're reachable, out of reach. We set up areas for the children so that they can feed themselves, little plastic plates in the lower levels. We put tools in one spot, areas for the husband. We want to, for example, the priorities generally are the kitchen, the bedrooms, and the office, or it could be the office, the kitchens, the bedrooms. So we work with them to fine-tune what it is that will satisfy them and get them moving on as fast as possible.
Now, that's amazing. I think I am a closet organizer. I mean, being an organizer in the closet, not doing closets. Because that's what I did with a client who was expecting a baby, had a little boy, and we moved her kitchen prior to her moving, prior to the people coming and picking up all the other furniture. So he had his little sticky decals on the bottom of the drawers, so he could go in and get his Tommy Tippy cups and everything else and didn't feel so unbalanced.
Right.
It kept that crying and that agita out of the situation for a while. But that was...
We do a lot to get the children into the home so that they're not... we set it all up. Usually the children's rooms, if they have little ones, have to go first. And you set up the same skirting and bedding and curtains and the little toys. And I have certain people in my staff who have children, and they do the kids' rooms. And then there's certain people who have been chefs, and they do the kitchens, and some people who are really statistically minded, and they do the offices. So it's a system that really, it's quite amazing.
Well, we're going to hear more about this, and Margaret will share, well, actually, she's not going to share them. I have custody of these letters, and I'm going to share them with you. So do come back and hear a couple of very, very wonderful testimonials. We'll be right back. Well, welcome back. Margaret Walsh is here, and we're talking about moving. It actually is an art. And Margaret, you've been doing it so long that you make it sound almost seamless. But we know it's not. It's just wrought with emotion. We spoke about that when we were off camera. Right. And tell me what it is about this whole entity, this whole business that you've started, that you get jazzed the most about.
Well, I think moving is one of the top 5 stresses. And for a client to trust us to get their house back in order and let them get on with their lives, they could be busy executives, parents with sick children, older people that aren't moving around very well, and to have them within a day to 2 days or 3 days getting on with their lives, there are no more boxes, everything is completely organized, and walk away and go, wow, you're done, enjoy your house. We just think it's a gift. It's a gift to be that organized and to be able to accomplish so much. It's like fur flying. It's just, I'm grateful every day.
Well, I have to say that we have a letter, and we won't mention the man's name, but unless you want to bring it up afterwards. But it comes to Margaret, and it says, "The President of the United States, for whom I was a delegate, and the entire Congress under whom I suffer, have done little for me that I can attest to. You, however, who have packed my entire house in one breathtaking day, moved and unpacked it in another so thoroughly that I could have had a dinner party the day afterwards, absolutely saved my life, and I'm eternally grateful." Wow! Did he propose marriage?
Oh, no.
So that is fabulous.
Yeah.
And it's probably what you live for.
It is. I mean, it's not easy doing what I do, and you can have an unhappy client because they've come from things that haven't worked, and people get upset because things are put in different places. And the system that we've created avoids as much change as possible. So we do our best to make a happy client.
And the downsizing letters, there's an Oppenheimer letter, where they were going from a 3,500 square foot home to a 2,100 square foot home. Now, our clients may say, this is a great idea, but what if I can't afford to get somebody to come in and help me professionally figure this whole thing out? Where do they stumble? Where's the biggest stumbles that you see? Do they try to do it too quickly? What is it, planning?
They try to think they don't position their furniture, and either they keep too much or they keep too little.
Okay.
So you need to do a floor plan and measure it out, and then all of the possessions have to have a place to go. So you label the boxes where they're going, not where they came from. And that sounds very simple, but a lot of people don't do that. There are lots of ins and outs and ways of making it happen. I will go in on a single consultation and just tell them how to do it and let their children and their mates and their gardeners or friends come over and help them, because it's in such an overwhelm they'll make mistakes, and it's not. And then I have ways of teaching them how to pack their own boxes, and movers will help and do all the fragile. We come in and do the soft, and if they want to do it themselves, that's fine. It's just a matter of the gift of having some help and knowing what to do, which is correct, instead of making mistakes.
Well, you mentioned just a couple of segments ago that this woman had movers and had brought her to this single, basically very small apartment, and had ruined everything. How do people pick movers? I mean, how do you do that? I see people going, and of course when I get listings, the minute it hits MLS, movers are calling night and day and leaving messages, because I don't know, somehow they get these lists. But how do they, how do they decide?
I've been doing it for a really long time, so I have very special movers. I actually got trapped with a mover who we shipped it from San Francisco to Washington, D.C., and I flew in with a supervisor to unpack it. And it was 2 movers for the equivalent of 50,000 pounds. And they unpacked it, 2 men, for 3 days. And I had this huge crew. You can't always be accurate, but you need to find out who the president is, get the driver's phone numbers, make sure that you have a way to track them down, because they will break things and then not repair them. So it's really hard.
Are there any special bondings that they should have, or just that they're a big, reputable company? And do you need a specialist in moving a piano? I'm always asked that.
No, you don't, but you need a special mover who knows how to move a piano. And I would interject that it's very, very important for them to have very high insurance, $250 and $500 deductible or full value wherever they're going. If they're going long distances, it should be full value, so that if anything's broken, the mover has to pay for it all.
Okay.
So that's the big tip.
Because you just hear so many stories, especially going long distance. Well, you can go short distance. It's amazing. I wonder, how are they driving? Do they think they're Andy Granadelli? It's like, take those corners just a little slower, thank you. Now, as far as the real deals, if you had to put it in steps as to what they should do, you talked about the floor plan, making sure there's a floor plan or a feng shui or whatever, just that you've got it all laid out, because I know that you also do quite a bit in decorating, yes?
Yes, we do. We do the first thing to do is to pack and sort, so that you're not taking things that you don't want. Putting all tools together, putting all videos together, putting all of your jewelry together, all your sweaters together, because some people have it everywhere. It's hard to imagine. And then designing the floor layout, labeling the boxes where they're going, so if you don't know where they're going, then you have to label where they came from. But putting them in, so they end up in the room they're going to. Looking at making sure that if you had a bookcase in one house, you have a bookcase in another. Making sure the furniture fits. Making sure the access fits. I sent a job to New York, and it all had to be rigged through the 7th floor window at 2:30 in the afternoon on a snowy day in New York City. So the details of not taking too much, as I said before, is very important. Not having the right furniture, having enough time so that the job is planned properly. I get a lot of last-minute calls for things, and
it's so important to take the time to plan ahead.
Yeah.
What is it? Prior planning prevents poor performance.
Right, right.
And the real deal is you're saying about stocking the refrigerator, so you need to send a helper or somebody out to stock that refrigerator so you're not hungry halfway through the move.
Right. Well, I actually request that they get pizza and sodas and things for the movers, and then I usually bring food for the client, and then we end up with bringing them flowers at the end of the job, because they need to have something beautiful in their lives. And we do the details of shelf papering, the drawers, I have a guy that'll just buy all of the insets for the new drawers so that the silverware doesn't roll all over and the mechanical, electrical doesn't get in the wrong place. And hanging the pictures. A house isn't done unless the pictures are hung. And we also end up building tons and tons of storage in all parts of the house because the small California houses are very different from, for example, East Coast shipments.
I hear that all the time.
Yeah.
I hear that. I actually had a case where somebody moved. They said, could we store a couple of things in the person's garage before we close escrow? They brought a 2,100 square foot house practically into this one little. I'm going, wait a minute, this is a California garage. This is a one-car garage.
Yeah.
You can't get this much in here. Yeah. So it was just a nightmare. We made it through, but I will never, ever agree to something like that. Okay, we've got about a minute and a half. If you were to just give a food for thought for where do you see this whole industry going with the aging of the boomers and all? Just growing, or?
It's going to. They need to really look at the amount of belongings they have in feng shui. You want 80% of what you own you could give away right now, and 20% is what you could keep, and you wouldn't miss it. I have a lot of clients that go into rental homes for a remodel, and I'm just doing one right now, and they said, we haven't seen that stuff in a year. We don't need it. So we are very materialistic, and it's better to have less right now, and that's what they need to start thinking about.
Okay. You heard it here. For all you boomers who are going to be moving, make sure that you remember less is more. And thank you, Margaret.
Thank you so much.
And thank you for tuning in. Remember, if I missed anything, please make sure that you send it to me via email or snail mail, and we will answer it on Trends and Issues. And thank you so much for joining Real Estate with Bobbi Decker. I always enjoy having these wonderful guests on and sharing the knowledge with you. See you next week.